I'm live. I decided to read chapter 6 of part 4 of The Winged Pharaoh as well, before I get going. It was written by Joan Grant, was published in 1937, and it is a book of her own far memory, which plays in the ancient Egypt, before Babylon and before the flood. So it's a long time ago. She is in the underworld, training to be co-ruler of Calm. Chapter 6. The Pitiful Ones. Then I went to that place where are those who upon earth know not true gods, but worship a blind figure of injustice, whom they call Fate, and they are guided not by their will, but are driven by the reins of their own imaginations. Among them are those who fear famine, although the granaries are full and their sleeping bodies are satisfied with food. Here they are like skeletons with hunger, and round them are empty grain jars, and even their water pitchers are cracked and broken. And here also are some who on earth have but a little fever, yet here they suffer the torments of all the illnesses of the flesh that they have seen or heard of, and they spend their nights sweating in an agony that is of their own creation. And here are some who, though their land is at peace, fear death in battle, and though their sleeping bodies are safe upon the bed places of their own houses, every night their flesh is pierced by arrows, and their skulls staved in by the maces of their enemy. And here are some who upon earth have well-watered fields, deep in grain, and fat cows whose milk hisses from heavy udders, yet here they wring their hands as they walk over the desolation of their barren fields, or watch their sick cattle dying in the byre. To these I went. I told them that they were being as cruel to themselves as a scribe who cuts off his right hand, or a gardener who destroys his most precious plants. And I told them that of their own craven fear they created the realities that they dreaded, so that the wise compassion of the gods was kept from them by barriers of their own building. Few there were who listened to me, but to one I talked to night after night for years had lived death. On earth he was a soldier of the garrison of Nakish, and he was on an expedition in the deep forest to the south. I knew that round his camp there was an ambush of the pygmy people. I told him to return to earth and to lead his 20 men through a narrow defile down the river, where they might yet escape this closing net. I put my hands upon his shoulders and said, "You shall have the courage for which you have prayed, and you shall no longer visit this shadowland, but belong to the companionship of the brave." And his fear-ridden eyes grew calm, and he returned to his body and left my sight. I knew that before the sun again set over Calm, the time of his return from exile would be reached, and that in his dying he would find that he no longer suffered 1,000 deaths. Rather would he walk clear-eyed and fearless into the light. Then I talked to a man who feared pain and disease, and I told him no longer to think about his ills, but to fill his courtyard with all the suffering and the crippled who crossed his path, and in succouring those who needed it, he might attain to the courage of those who felt deep pain, and rent not the air with lamentation, but smiled their courage. And I told a rich man who feared to starve no longer to guard his granary, but to share his plenty with the poor, and that in so doing he might share the satisfaction of those whom he had fed, and learn that it is better to lie hungry upon straw and to find refreshment away from earth, than to live in fear of famine, and in sleep to suffer it. These 3 listened to me, yet there were many who refused my words and strove not for that courage which would free them, and they stayed amongst the pitiful ones who dwell in prison. In prisons they have built around themselves. Happy Sunday.